yesterday on Instagram, I read a quote that failure is psychological until you're dead.
So I think at the end of the day, no one can really tell you anything, right? This is your journey and you got to do it. Creation always happens at a very small scale.
Yes.
Like podcast, this is a podcast, right?
Yes.
And people think podcast is oversaturated. There's hundreds and hundreds and millions of people listening and watching.
Yeah.
How many of them do create?
What is your thoughts of the importance of operating background in the investing field?
What I've noticed, some of the most successful investors do come from. When I first moved to the States, I had this concept, right? Like having no plan Bs.
If you have a plan B, you'll only do plan B.
Don't feel empowered enough to make a decision that might upset a ton of people. And
what keeps you motivated to continue going without seeing anything?
I feel like.
So Ajay, we were talking about the fact that how important is storytelling and how some of the employees are so good at their work, but not so great at interviewing. So where do you think that this comes from?
I have this, I know someone, I think I worked with him in the past, and so realize like really good employee, gets the job done, also analytical, right? And what I realized, he couldn't find a job. And I was like, how the heck you can't find a job? Like you're good. You work with US company. The US on the resume means like at least someone is gonna look at it. I'm not gonna say like it's better or worse, right? Still didn't find a job. And what I realized is that it's not the skill, it's just the fact that they can sell themselves. And I have met so many people, but that companies have advised, and I've met their employees in the States here, where they're like VP of something, director of something, CEO of something as well, But the knowledge is like super low. Really fucking good at bullshitting, really good at talking, really good at story. And storytelling is different than bullshitting or anything else, right? Like it's a different skill altogether, right? But someone who can tell a story and who can just talk versus someone who cannot express themselves, right? Like can't explain a problem, whatever that is, right? That just is a negative for that to start with. So I think talking is a good skill. In general, I say storytelling can only happen when you can talk.
What is your thoughts of the importance of operating background in the investing field?
What I've noticed, some of the most successful investors do come from finance background. Like in terms of numbers, right?
Sure.
And I used to always believe that operators make really good investors, and I think they do. But why do then people who have never built anything in their life still bet again and again on some of the best companies in the world, right? And I do think this has something to do with detaching yourself from any aspect of emotions and bias and whatever they have, and only and purely look at the data and look at the numbers, right? It's like investing in the stock market, right?
Yeah.
There's an emotional investor, and there's the number is here, time to sell, time to sell. Is to buy and hold, is to buy and hold. It has nothing to do with the market goes up and down, the emotions go wild, whatever happens, right? I think something that I've come to appreciate that, I don't like the fact that I'm talking to someone who hasn't built something. I sort of have sometimes less respect for them, right? But you have to understand they might make a better decision because they're purely going against what has worked, what might work in the future, what does the data tell you to make that investment, right? So I think that's why you have less operators. And operators also love to build, right?
True.
Like I'm just investing as an angel and I have a syndicate, but I don't see myself as a full-time investor. And even if I ever do investment as a fund or raise money, whatever I do, I think I'll do it for the sake of I'll build something, maybe part-time, and then maybe have a fund on the side part-time. And I do both because I want to learn. My big thing is that I think I would be stagnant the moment I stopped learning, right? I think I won't consider myself smart or anything if I wasn't building something, because the world is changing so fast, right? So if you don't develop or sharpen your skills, I think on a daily basis, you're almost like a lost cause, right? Because the world is changing and technology like AI is coming in and all the deep tech is coming in, right? Robotics is coming in. And imagine you're just investing. Yes, you learn from other companies and what they're doing, but you have less hands-on experience. For me to learn, I want to have a hands-on experience where I am relevant and I can do stuff and I can help other entrepreneurs do it as well, right? So I think that that cycle has to keep going on for me, just to keep learning and stay relevant for myself, not for anyone else.
And what are the top, so let's say if, when you're evaluating companies as an angel, uh, what is it you look for? I mean, let's say if I'm building a company from scratch, what are the key things you'll look at as your parameters before deciding whether you want to invest or not?
For me, I think it's always been people, actually. I think I kind of almost believe that if you back the right founders, they'll find a way to make it work, right? And I think it's one of those wisdom that I think we've heard from a lot of people too, like back the right teams, right? So I've now done almost, over 30 investments now, and I think I can say I might end up having, let's say, 3 unicorns in my belt, right? And I never talk about my investments, by the way, online. I just never talk about it. I don't share what I've invested in. It's been a very private something to me. But what I've noticed now in my portfolio, I have potentially 3 unicorns sitting, in a pool of, let's say, 30 something plus investments that I've been doing for a very, very long time. And I feel what some of these companies that I've invested in, I've known them for a long time. I've seen them struggle. And 2 of them have the same exact pattern, actually. Founders struggled, hustlers, does not come from traditional backgrounds at all. Struggle early days to raise capital, focus on revenue, didn't work, then went back, like really struggle, right? And some companies failed, some succeeded, some sold for like no money, just a namesake selling, right? Realize all these founders have something in common. That grit was there, right? And they were learning faster. They had to prove themselves, right, more than other people who are successful. So I almost felt like if I put money behind them, somehow something is going to work out, right? Because I think what you have to realize in life, and I think I believe that for myself now as well, I'm now building my 3rd company, I have to be right only one time. Right? I think so many founders don't tell themselves this simple story. If you're going to swing it hard, right? You're swinging all the time, but you only have to be right one time. You only have to swing one fucking time, right?
Yeah.
And if you swing as hard as you can and it hits the right timing, I think you're going to make it really, really big. So I think as long as you can find those people who enjoy the game, right, the long term, and they can still keep swinging, you never know when the bet might turn out to be a really good one.
Sure. So if, let's say, if Ajay of today, as an investor, had met the Ajay of back then when you were building the first company, would you have invested in yourself?
I would invest in myself, actually, yeah.
What was it in you back then which would have given you that confidence without any biases?
I think, I've had this thing when I first moved to the States, I had this concept, right? Like having no plan Bs, right? There's no plan B, right? And there's a plan A, that's the only plan you have. And I think that took me far. My first company, I stuck around for that for almost a decade. My second company, almost 4 years. And now the 3rd company, right? So I've really switched less. I could have gone and worked for anyone, actually, any, I think, C-level co-founder positions in any companies, made a lot of money. I didn't do that. I don't enjoy that at all. And I think for me, it's like I know I'm the one who's going to swing it hard at some point, right? I built things that haven't died. So I think in generally, I've been good about at least finding decent, good ideas. I wouldn't say great so far. And some have been really big, some have been really small. So all I'm doing is maybe optimizing my bets, right? You can take a number of bets, and I think one of the bets is going to play out really, really well. So I would definitely invest in myself.
Where did that come from? I mean, so I've seen very different, very opposing views on this whole concept of not having a plan B. Because I personally am a great believer in this concept that if you have a plan B, you'll only do plan B. Does it come from a background of, of past experiences? Because you are starting out, that's a very fresh career. Where does it come from?
I think my dad, man. So my dad failed, I think, for a decade, I remember. Maybe more, but I think I kind of almost like a decade, right? So he would basically grew up in India. My dad was, farmer's son, maybe studied till, I don't know, 6th grade, I guess. So not very well educated, right? Struggled a lot in life. And I think at some point he maybe found a path that sort of fit his desire and interest. And that was like real estate. But I remember him failing like for at least a decade straight. And he would come home and he would always say, one day I'll make it. One day I'll make it. And he sort of believes someone when your own parents tell you that one day you will make it, you feel like maybe you believe the first year, you believe the second year. It's like a crying wolf, right? At some point, you stop believing.
Yeah.
And maybe I think some point I did stop believing in my dad as well, right? Because he kept saying this thing, but it never happened. And then he did swing pretty hard. I remember that. I think the swinging mentality comes from that as well for me. I do remember that when he did hit, it was a big one, a really big one. None of us ever imagined that he would make it in this way for himself. So I think that belief sort of gave me, he never had a plan B, right? He did hit pretty big. The swing was hard. But he kept trying for a decade. When no one believed, he did believe in himself. So I think at the end of the day, no one can really tell you anything, right? This is your journey and you got to do it. But I think I sort of learned that from my dad. Just make it happen.
How do you define swinging hard?
In many ways, it is unimaginable, actually, right? If you sort of like grew up with no money, like I remember, growing up with, maybe I had life where we had some money, middle class family, and then no money for like a decade or so, and then maybe a lot more, let's say, upper middle class family money. And then you feel like, okay. And then if I go and raise, let's say, 10 plus $20 million, like, oh, fuck. Right? I don't know. You don't even know what to do with that because you've never seen it. Right?
Yeah.
You've never seen it. So as your ambition gets bigger and bigger. So swinging hard is not necessarily a thing that is like more money swinging hard. I think something that if your desire has been, let's say freedom to you looks like $20 million. If you have an exit, you got $20 million in the bank account, you feel like I'm free forever. Spend time with your kids, your family, whatever the passion, desires you have, right? Build stuff, invest stuff. That for someone can be swinging hard. So I think it's something that you've always desired to have an idea about, that you almost believe is impossible.
I'm building this company, my own company, which is Scrabble, for almost 4 years now. And me and my co-founder always, so she also happens to be my wife, but we have not been drawing salaries since last 4 years. And there's this always, we keep speaking with a lot of people who are ex-colleagues, etc. And they are making a decent amount of money. And there's this whole, fight between us that when will we start drawing money? Because now our employees are making a lot more money, etc., etc. So I personally am of a believer that there will be a hockey stick, thing which will come. But I don't know when it will come. I don't know how much will come. But we need to keep running. Without having that visibility in mind, I'm sure since you were smiling, you would have had many such moments in life. So as founders, how do you keep yourself then motivated? What keeps you motivated to continue going without seeing anything?
I feel like when you're having too much fun building something and too much joy, like really true happiness, then I do feel that you just build because you enjoy building and solving a problem. And this is the tough one, right, to explain, because I think what happens is, in my case, I found that joy in now. When I like to do stuff for myself, like I would maybe take a break, go and work out, spend time with my wife, or maybe call my friends, maybe learn a new hobby, maybe do something, I think more relaxed version. But then I would also wake up till like 2 a.m. and put in easy, intense work as well, I think where I found the balance is like, it's not a balance, it's like I have the freedom to think and the freedom to do the things that I love the most, right? And I know that when you're building in that sort of like environment and nature, you kind of end up building a better product, I realize. You build it the right way. You're not in a rush to raise capital. You're not in a rush to hire too many people. So I think I'm in that state today, I can speak to that at least, that I am such a relaxed founder. Not like I still have the intensity, I put in a lot more hours, like I'm intense in my work, but more the mind is more like calm. And I'm seeing that our customers are loving the product. I'm going deeper in the things that we're building. Investors are reaching out to me for raising capital, giving us money, but I'm like, I don't want to raise money right now. We're not ready. We take calls. Some reject. Some are very interested. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have nothing to do with if you want to give me money and you reject me. I have no feelings around that stuff because I don't really care. All I care about is building this right type of business, because I know when you do that, you're going to have a ton of money, a ton of swinging hard, things going to happen, right? So I think if you have that, then you feel like, okay, I'm building the right business and I can do this for a very long time. Then you'll definitely make it in that sense.
So that's a lot of wisdom which has now come in after those years of hard work.
Yes.
So while you were doing those years of hard work,
I
that
think-
is when what is your next goal post?
I think then you got to do it, man. I think in those early years of you're building companies, when you haven't gotten here to where whatever people describe that wisdom is, right? You got intensity, work a fucking lot, work your ass off. I think there's no such thing as, I don't believe in the balance in the early days of your life or your career, right? There's no balance shit.
Yeah.
You're gonna grind as hard as you can because everybody's grinding.
Yeah.
And you have to make it, right? You have to survive. The world is a brutal place. People are gonna cut you out from all sides, right? So I think that's when I did my hard part. Like super intense for 15 plus years now, building companies, right? And I thought I fucking barely slept. Health was shit, right? I don't like that. I think I'm proud to do that kind of stuff. But I think I had to do it because only way to scale your learning is just to put in the time to do it. And now I feel like I'm in a different path of my life. So if you're starting out early, you gotta grind. Find some balance if you can. I think there's also no such thing as like working 24/7, and you'll be a great, at working those things. You have to find time for yourself.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that topic in, this whole hustle and I mean how it is such an abused word.
Oh my God,
and
yeah.
people, I mean, the moment you open LinkedIn, people are just bashing how work-life balance has been going for a toss, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So and then people continue staying ambitious.
Yeah.
Right. So you spoke about the fact that early stage of your career, it is important that I mean, you need to find that. I personally feel that if you want an extraordinary life, you need to put an extraordinary amount
Yeah.
of effort.
Intensity has to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where is this whole? Because in Europe they're whole going for 4-day work week, etc., etc. So for growing countries, do you think that we can afford that kind of culture at all?
I mean, I think, man, this is the bar, right? Most people are gonna go for that when they're starting out, more relaxed and 9 to 5 and do this. That's your choice. That's your personal choice, right? And there's gonna be some gonna see like, I don't wanna be like everybody else.
Yeah.
I wanna climb the ladder, right? Go above, beyond like a whole layer of the job and the people, right? And that small portion of the people are gonna say, I'm gonna grind as hard as I can, right? It's like intense for a short enough time, grind the fuck out, build something amazing or fail at great lengths, right? Learn super fast, and then keep going on, keep building and take off, right? So I think in that case, you that's your choice. So you can be like everybody else, or you can leave the pack completely and just find your own path and build your own pack basically, right? And that would require some grind, some pain. Has to happen like that.
What brings you to India?
Family, man, family and work,
Okay.
So
Why work?
So all of my companies have had teams in India always. Funny enough, like my first company, I think most of the employees were in the States, and of course Mexico, Eastern Europe, and whatnot. And very small team in India. And I realized that when you're early stage company, you need to optimize for the longest runway possible, right? And that's a function of who you can hire and where. So I think I made a big mistake around hiring all expensive in the States. My second company, we made the team opposite, much larger in India, smaller on the west side, the US side. And over there, I think we realized that runway was much longer because of that. So that gave us almost an edge over other companies, right? A comparative advantage that we can build faster, we can ship faster, we can grow faster because we had the capital used wisely, I would say in this case, right? And had the team to support it. And now my third company, my team is kind of like a maybe half and half kind of style. I have a co-founder who's also living in Bangalore. And then we have a team in Delhi, we're building a team in Gujarat side as well, small teams. And it's just a great group of 10 people, part-time, full-time. So this time I'm coming to India to kind of spend more time early on with them. So like we bond differently and build the early strong culture and start to ship fast, same thing, right? Less or more hours, it doesn't matter what you put in, but intensity has to be there.
So India is in that rocket ship in terms of next decade being, I mean, super fast growing.
Fast, yeah.
So what can we learn from a country like US, which has seen that evolution happening, both from cultural standpoint. If you are building from scratch, let's
Yeah.
say if I'm building for India versus in US, what are the things which I can learn for?
Man, I think in India, I mean, what I observe here is that there's less capacity. I guess paying capacity is on the lower side still, right? So India I feel, is a long-term game. You gotta find, I think as an entrepreneur, you gotta find a way to sort of like stay alive, I think for the next decade. If you're gonna make money from this country, you have to be in the game for at least a decade. There's no other way I can see it, right? Because you build a brand, you own the mind share, and somehow you can figure out whatever works in India, you offer that. So the price point has to be very Indian, right? The buying method has to be Indian. As an example, people like to buy one time only. They don't like subscription here, right? People don't use credit cards a lot. They maybe do UPI and bank transfer a lot, right? They like smaller, cheaper things, a lot more discounts, a lot more offers and features, right? It's like even I know that, and I haven't built a business in India ever, except my first maybe dev shop when I'm first starting out. So I think that understand the country at that level, and keep your biases to yourself. Because you can be like, oh, I want to do this and I want to change that and blah blah blah. I think go with the flow of India, and build for the long term and do it. But I think in the US is like you have to be really good at a couple of things, right? Like, so deep tech is huge, right? Hardcore tech problems are very huge, right? Infrastructure is pretty big. I think India is now building some of that as well, right? We're still using OpenAI. We don't have OpenAI in India, right?
Sure.
We're using Perplexity. We don't have Perplexity in India yet, right? So I think a lot of the better type of companies for India should be built within India. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs doing a lot of amazing things, so many amazing big names in the market, right? They're all funding, all starting, all innovating, right? So I think this is happening. The cycle is happening now. And then we want to see local M&A happening in India, right? Because still they depend on outside.
Sure.
It's like the US biggest power is that they can just do so much of this inside the country. Actually, yeah, they don't need, you barely hear some other country's company came and bought something for like a 50 billion, 10 billion, right? It's always a US company buying other companies for that kind of price.
Sure, sure. You also spoke about the fact that founders generally are not great managers. I mean, you made that statement while we were off camera.
Yes.
And I somewhere agree with it because when we are doing a hiring process, generally founders would be a little more iffy about, I mean, the whole discipline around hiring, the whole discipline about being on time, the whole discipline about interviewing in a certain manner, the whole discipline about selling your company in the best possible manner to employees. And somewhere I feel that people start having the superiority complex that, I mean, I'm more superior as a man, as a founder. So what do you think founders need to learn, having operated your own company, having observed companies, being an angel investor? So what do you think founders can learn? I mean, in terms of being better at managing people, because that's how you build organizations.
I mean, I can say, listen, now looking back, I mean, I was a terrible manager. My first company, I was super terrible. And I think it took me a very long time to realize that. And I was in my early 20s, looking at 21, 22, 23-year-old kid building companies, right? You don't know any better. You barely know yourself. So I think a lot, if you imagine that age, that whole demographic, and you're building companies, I think you're not going to be the best manager out there. Because there's a couple of factors in that, right? One, you have a chip on your shoulder. You have to make it. Every young founder, they have to make it. Look at all the YC companies coming out, super young founders, right? If you ask them, what do you want to do and why are you doing this? You gotta make it. You gotta solve a big problem. You gotta go big. So this ambition is super high. So that ambition shouldn't be stopped by being the best, because they can't. It's just your hormones even. I feel it's just your mental state is not even there, right? So I think when you start early on, young founders are terrible managers. That's just period, because ambition is what they thrive. They can't fail, even though your failure is good, but they're scared of failing because they gotta just go, and all of your friends and peers raising capital, moving fast. So you have this high competition bar, right? So you can't slow down and do this stuff. So you can't do that either, right? And then I think the third, you never went to any training, you haven't done the MBAs and undergrads yet, you did undergrad, no one really taught you how to manage people. You never managed people before, right? So I think all these factors make you not such a good manager just because where you are, not because of anything else, right? Not because you choose to be a bad manager, in most cases. So I think the big thing with these younger founders, I would not expect to join them. Oh my God, I'm going to work for the best manager. You join them because, oh my God, this ship is going to take off, right? And all of us are kind of on that ship now, and let's build as fast as we can. We're going to break a lot of stuff, right? And I think what I'm also seeing, these founders make a ton of mistakes, right? I was a terrible manager. Then the next company, I was a much better manager, and not because I think I was much calmer, because of course, getting older as well, but also you realize that management does help in making employees feel a certain way, right? The productivity goes up, the morale goes up, right? The culture gets better in general, and you have less problem on your hands. I feel like it's almost like when you have a bad work culture because of being a bad manager, what you end up happening is the company struggles, right?
Yeah.
Scaling issues, revenue issues, or just a lot of cultural, disgruntled employee issues. This all happens because of that, right? And then you overspend the money, the HR, the fires you got to put out to solve that. So now you realize, like, what if I work tiny bit? You don't have to be the best manager, decent manager, bearable at least. That doesn't destroy the work culture, right? Maintain, and maybe hopefully you can be a better manager, right? So when I did that, I felt like I was a much better manager, right? The culture was much healthier, right? No issues in the company, no like disgruntled employees in the company, regardless, right? Because everybody makes mistakes, employee side and the employer side, right? So it's like, oh, we saved a lot of time, ton of money, ton of headache, ton of emotional baggage as well, right? So I think then when you do it again, you maybe you're a better manager. I think it helps to stay on the more lenient, more medium, instead of being super harsh and whatever you can be. But yes, tough to find good managers when you're young.
And if you have to coach a young founder in terms of how to be a good manager, what would be your top 3 tips?
And I think now I've learned a couple of things that I've done with my teams. One is, I think you kind of have to be good about, like, take your time in finding the right people. That is a skill also, right? And the easiest way to do this thing, if you feel like it's not like some rocket science, I think there's a lot of things to it. You work with someone, if you like them, maybe you work with them for a month. Part-time, freelancing, whatever that is, right? Like him, maybe another 3 months, this is the same capacity, right? You really get to learn about people during that interaction, right? And then once you do that, you can make them full-time. You'll have less issues because you have an exit door for both the parties. You can go, and I can also say no, maybe I can also leave, right? So that's one. Aligning on the culture where you have less set of values. I think that as a manager, as a founder, you don't want to have too many value systems. No one lives by them. They're too long. There's 10 of them. You can't even remember them, right? Maybe
Can you
have
give me
one.
examples?
I mean, I had in my first company, maybe 10 of those. I don't remember. Be like people who you trust, and I don't know, man. But we only had one value in the last company, and that was show, don't tell. That's it. Right? Just literally, we believe in let's not keep talking. Let's just see what we can do. And then generally we had hey, keep things simple, and then treat someone as you would want to be treated. Right? It's just a human value. You don't have to put a value on that.
Correct.
Right? That's just a common, just as being a human being, right? So I think if you have less of those things, even now I only have one same show, don't tell. That's it. There's nothing else to do. I carried that value from our last company to my new company now because I feel like there's nothing else to it. If we all do deliver our job, half the problems have been solved already, right? And the second comes, you empower your employees, right? But also you make sure that you don't have to always wait for them to see how things gonna work out. You can always say, hey, this is how I want it to be when you start the conversation or start the job or whatever that is, and you can empower them slowly instead of you kind of be very hands off. And it doesn't work for a lot of people. Hands off, and you see how they do, and then I want to judge them. And maybe you can expedite that process. And as you build that trust, open up more and more, and you can let them do more and more because the employee is going to take on the responsibility by themselves instead of you give them from day one. So, and just listen. Just be a good listener to your team member. Spend time with them. Do small things that bonding, right? It's like these massive. I've done retreats and everything, and I feel like you can spend so much money and you feel like, oh, wow, we had a great time. But then I realize something like a game night, even a walk, reading activities, or some escape the room we just did recently with our team, bonds super well, super
Yeah.
cheap. I don't have to go to spend all that money. And I made those mistakes too. I spent all this money and you thought the culture would be stronger. I realized like it didn't really do much for the company.
Nice, great. One more critical thing which I've seen, which traditional companies have sometimes done well. Some, if I look at some of the large enterprises like Tata's or for that matter HDFC's or the world, where founder had very little role to play in the outcome of the company. So, I've hardly seen startups, at least in India, going through that evolution. I'm quite certain that in US there will be many such examples. So, it is a function of time, or is it the function of impact which you've created, and how do you go about it?
I think it's just like I would say, it's like the who you hire, right? If you're the one building the culture from day one, and you don't really build, it's a set of things you do that comes together that builds a culture, right? And if you hire the first three people the right way, then they'll forward that. Excuse me, they carry forward that culture, and then the next three, and then the next three, and the next three, right? So you gotta like multiply that, and then you sort of like are not the one who built it. It's just the people who built, maintained, and added to that, right? But you have to be the one, like the gatekeeper of that. If there's something that you don't think that should exist in the company, then that is your choice. I think sometimes founders also or managers don't feel empowered enough to make a decision that might upset a ton of people. And it's okay. It's what you're building. You're building something and people have joined you on that rocket ship. There's only one pilot or the one who's in charge to take that ship, right? Unless everybody's hands-on, and then maybe the rocket would never go anywhere, right? So that is the fact that everybody has to know from day one. So you can be the gatekeeper of the culture. Of course, watch it carefully, but let it thrive and let it flourish as people take it from you and then distribute among everyone else.
One last thing, Ajay, which I found. So while going through your profile, I've seen that you have more than 1 lakh followers on LinkedIn, and of late, what I've started observing is that founders and employees have started understanding the importance of LinkedIn and putting content out there, irrespective of however you are. So when did you start realizing that? Did it happen by accident, or was it by design that you've gone about this?
Man, I started LinkedIn maybe 15 years ago.
Okay.
Like literally crazy. I used to post like long time ago, yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't know what it was and how it would impact. I didn't believe in it. I just did it because just to do it. And then I stopped doing it for a couple of years, and I came back again to do it again. It's like crazy. The journey has been very on and off. It's been super rewarding now. Now, the consistency is there. I still post 5 days a week actually, consistently. Some things do really well, some things don't do well. It doesn't really matter. And what I'm realizing that once you start building a narrative and a story around who you are online, people follow you for that. People want to see stories and your stories, what's happening in your life, in your company. And as you build that, you find investors, you find customers, you find team members. Like if I post now about looking for a team member, it's going to go viral, and I think we're going to find a lot of people. Helps. If you're raising money, if you share something, then we can find investors for that as well, right? So I think building a brand is, to me, non-negotiable. Because the funny part about brand building and maybe sharing a story, on LinkedIn, very few small percentage people create and everybody else consumes. It's always been the case, right? Creation always happens at a very small scale.
Yes.
Like podcast, this is a podcast, right?
Yes.
And people think podcast is oversaturated.
Yeah.
There's hundreds and hundreds and millions of people listening and watching.
Yeah.
How many of them do create? I don't know, less than 100,000, maybe a couple 100,000, right? Like
True.
should be super small number, right? Compared to what people listen. So there's always a room to start a new podcast. People can listen, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is a big deal in brand building on LinkedIn or any other place. You have to put yourself out there because the opportunities are waiting for you around this world that just you haven't seen or explored.
But what made you start doing it? I mean, did you realize it early on?
That's it. I just did it. I had no intention.
Okay.
It was like LinkedIn was
randomly?
there.
Yeah.
I think I remember I had this contractor who was helping ghostwrite for me. This is like 15 years ago or something. And she's like, hey, we should post on LinkedIn as well. Like literally, I'm telling you, I have no idea. I actually never utilized LinkedIn in the early days to what it could have been. It just happened to be. And then I took it very seriously maybe a couple of years ago. And now I, of course, have grown a lot. And it's become a big piece of my strategy to attract customers or my thoughts. And I find really, really interesting people. And I'm also starting a podcast now. I had the first guest. Now I got like another 4 guests in the pipeline, all from LinkedIn.
Oh.
I mean, I just message people and people don't say no because of the following base. It's kind of crazy because, and that has value, right? Because I have an audience.
Yeah.
If I post the right things and say the right things that they want to listen or bring to their attention, everybody wins. Everybody gets the eyeballs.
So when you're posting on LinkedIn, what is more important, to be authentic or to be viral?
I think authentic. Otherwise, we'll go viral all the time. Just share what you want to share. I think the most important thing for me is building a narrative. Like now I was posting random stuff and then AI stuff and then all this stuff. Now I've come to really post only about building my new company, Otto, about that. And also now having an opinion, strong opinion around small businesses, AI in small businesses, vibe coding, indie developers, because that's my base that I'm kind of helping with my new company. So I want to make sure that I'm an advocate to this base, share knowledge, get them to speak on these topics with me, right? Either podcast or online, offline, whatever that looks like, right? So I think, so it's the narrative that I'm creating, and that's important to me right now.
Sure. So what is it you're building and why you're building now?
I'm building a company called Otto AI, and the idea sort of came from my previous background where I worked with a lot of, I think, small businesses, and I was like, hey, if sort of AI unlocks more small businesses in this world, and I think vibe coding is a good example, right? Where anyone can build an app, anyone can build a website. So if anybody can start these apps, projects, and businesses, that means we can have tens and millions of people with their own businesses, either doing part-time or doing full-time. Now, if they do all that stuff, there's one thing that they struggle with the most, and that is back office, finance, accounting, taxes, compliance. So Otto AI basically is the all-in-one solution to help SMBs with their back office needs. So we do taxes for them, we do accounting for them, we just launched invoicing, launch legal contract signing. So we're building this whole suite of services, a very specific SMB.
Okay.
Service-based SMBs only. Start there at least, So
catering to customers in US itself or?
Yeah, US customers. But as I said before about playing the long game, right? India will have a game where we'll just keep it all free. At least the invoicing and legal contracts we'll just offer for free. Your whole team can use it, whole department can use it for free. We don't really care how many members you have, and we'll give you the best service possible, undercut everyone from Zoho, DocuSign, all these people. I don't think you should pay for those services. So we can help you build your businesses when you're super early and you don't have a lot of money to spend.
Okay. So finally, you've been a more seasoned content creator than I have. But so let's say if in case you have to evaluate this and talk about what is one thing which worked and what is one thing which you're missing in this conversation, would love to hear from you.
I mean, I think people love authentic, but I'm thinking, what is the audience? What kind of answers are they looking for, right? I think that's definitely missing. Like if today, I think we talked about this one, right? Like if there's not a trend, but it's something people are actively searching.
Yeah.
How can you deliver that through your medium, through your content, the podcast, the YouTube channels, right? To them. Because there's not much information around that topic yet. And this is like any founder who comes in, even asking their views about starting their own business, right? There's so many views on that, right?
Yeah.
And what I've seen now, people are very curious. I have a job full-time, right? And maybe you're working in a tech company, in a startup. It doesn't matter where you work. I have to make this, let's say, extra couple of $100 a month, or maybe a couple of $1,000 a month, right? How do I do that?
Yeah.
You can start part-time businesses, either consulting, coaching, or you build your own app that does something small. I do feel that everyone, as an employee, as a contributor to the organization, any organization, right, has some sort of unique skill. Maybe you're really good at lead qualification. Maybe you're really good at finding that hook in social media, right? Maybe you're really, really good at that editing captions. Just so you feel like this is your skill that you have, right? Like, what is your superpower? I was thinking about like, what is your superpower, right? And once you can find that superpower and you can build something around it, and you can launch it, and slowly maybe your friends, your connections are using it. You share about this on social media. I'm still full-time job. I'm not doing anything, right? It's just like my weeknights project, right? That generates a couple of $100, a couple of $1,000. You're not going and looking for another job. This is my own thing, and so that's what we were searching for. How do I make money on the side without leaving my job? Right? Because that is a big question. So I think in podcasts and conversations, you have to be like more like, hey, how can I bring that into the discussion?
Okay. And what do you think worked?
In this case, or the work? I think, you ask all the non-obvious questions, so that's right, pretty good. I think there's like, I've been reading about like scripted podcast and then unscripted, right? So this would be like unscripted. Like I had no idea what questions you would ask, right? We did it non-traditionally.
I'm a curious person, and if in case I have to, take something away as an audience member from somebody like Ajay, what, what can you give? Whether I'm an employee, whether I'm a founder, anything, any parting thoughts which you would like to share?
One thing I've learned the hard way is that don't ever let the success or whatever the success means to you get into your head. Same goes for failure. I think what I've realized and I've seen, people who are here have come down here. People who are here have gone up here. And I think that so when you meet someone, don't give them this much importance in life, and don't also treat them here, because you never know, the person you met can flip on the other side. Just you focus on yourself, right? Stay humble, stay grounded, stay the same. You don't have to really change much because you fucking build a company, or you raise millions of dollars, or you this classy founder, or maybe you failed and you didn't do anything, because our times can switch, right? Our successes can intertwine and switch as well, right? So I think stay grounded, highly focused on the goal. Intensity has to be there. And I think focus on all I have to be right is one time.
And this yesterday on Instagram, I read a quote that failure is psychological until you're dead.
I think it is what it is. It's all learning.
You
never know. Like I have met people who like, fuck, this would never happen, but it happened.
Yes.
So you want to have good relationship with people, just being a human, Like I was in a cab. This is like, I'll end the story here. And I was in a cab. I think I take Blue Smart all the time. I was from the airport going to Delhi, and I had this really good conversation with this guy, the driver. I always chit chat with them, and he talked about like, I don't know, something about going abroad, and people go abroad to America, and he didn't know that I lived there. It's been 20 years and whatnot, right? It was all Hindi, so he couldn't figure out. And at the end, we kind of came around the discussion. Somehow he asked me a question I had to mention, and he said, oh, wow, I could have never imagined that you would live outside, because so many people can be so shit and treat someone else like the other way around. So he literally told me to just stay the same. Thank you for that conversation. And that was so humbling for me. It's like, you never know.
Thanks a lot, Ajay. I really had fun chatting with you.
Yeah, dude. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me here.
All the best for Otto.ai.
Join Otto.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.